I'm kind of excited. This is my very first secret shopper video. You have no idea, I was shopping and I spent some money. Actually, no, I spent some money on one of my sponsors because I want to keep tabs on my sponsors. I want to know what they're up to when they're not knowing who they're sending to. So I bought this IBuyPower Slate Mesh PC from Amazon at a pretty killer price. And I figured if there's anywhere someone's gonna wanna cut corners, it's when there's a significantly inexpensive product. So we're gonna talk about this today. I fully benchmarked it. Well, I didn't fully benchmark it. I checked the frequencies and the temperatures and the settings to make sure everything is performing as it should. We're gonna talk about this today because this one was unexpected. The XG2736 and the XG2536 gaming monitors from Viewsonic feature 240Hz default refresh rates, 1 millisecond response time mode, and industry-leading 0.5 millisecond moving picture response time modes that are ideal for gamers demanding a competitive edge. Designed with eSports in mind, these XG monitors feature fully adjustable and low-profile footprint stand for optimal viewing distance that professional gamers demand. To learn more about the XG2736 1440p and XG2536 1080p competitive gaming panels from Viewsonic, follow the link in the description below. Okay, so let's talk about the way it was shipped first, because that's first and foremost. If it can't survive getting to the customer, then what damage is gonna happen? So this IBuyPower box was inside this Amazon box, which had a decent amount of like softness to it. That means it's gone through the loving touch of Amazon shipping. It was actually an Amazon Prime product. It came in 2 days, so I wanna point that out. But the box was fairly squished. As you can see, it was plenty of tape. It didn't open up or anything on us. So I was a little concerned about the contents inside. Now, if you look at the box that the computer came in, you can see at some point it took a corner hit right here. But fortunately, because of the type of foam and stuff they use, and inside that box, there was some paper. Paper's not gonna support the weight of a PC, even a light one like this. But it does have the open cell foam. So I think open cell is the soft foam. Anyway, it's squishy, so it has some suspension to it. That fully surrounded the tower, top and bottom. So as you can see, the corners were protected. That impact was protected by the foam here. And then the PC was inside of an anti-static bag. Inside the actual case itself, it did have this Instapack that was in there to support the GPU and stuff. It's a very light spec PC, and we'll talk about it in a second. But so I feel like shipping wise, they get like an A-. The reason why I'm gonna say A- is because of the fact that although Amazon is responsible for the packing of their product inside of an Amazon box, it's still IBuyPower that's reflected as the consumer receiving the product. It's gonna just say IBuyPower. So that should be improved, in my opinion. And I do appreciate the fact that they put it in a brown box. Let me explain why. If you took this and just put a label on it and sat that on a doorstep, it won't be there long if you're not there to receive it. It did not require an Amazon password to receive some expensive purchases. This was a $899 PC. We'll talk about the price now. It was $899 on sale, originally $999. Currently, as of making this video, the sale is over. It's now on sale for $980 something. So I thought it was one of those like, oh, we'll just say it's $999 and we'll put it on sale for $899 because it looks like a deal. No, it actually did come off sale after I bought it. So I got it for $899, which is actually a pretty good deal, I think. When we talk about me trying to build the same PC separately, when it comes to the value section of this video. But typically an expensive purchase like that, a lot of times from Amazon, will require a one-time password to receive the product. So the driver would come up to you and be like, hey, I got your delivery, and then they have their little device and they're like, I need your one-time password. You tell the Amazon driver the password, like it's usually numbers, he puts it in, he goes, okay, thank you. It's just for anti-fraud, anti-identity theft type of stuff. On the packaging here, you can see there's some immediate information here for technical support, dates, times, phone number, all that stuff. So didn't need that today because I'm happy to report that when we get to the section talking about how it worked, everything was working. Everything was working as intended. There were no issues, except one minor one. We'll talk about that in a sec. So the accessories that you get with it, I like how they even give you this. Can't control your RGB. There's a code there to scan it. It will tell you instructions on how to control your RGB. This one is using Aura because it is an Asus motherboard. I was already surprised that at this price point, we were able to get an Asus motherboard and an AM5 CPU. Anyway, also has a free gift apparently. So there's that. Here's some more important information about how to remove the side panel. You know, stuff like this would have been nice to see when we did our Digital Storm unboxing. We didn't even get anything like this with that. And that was an $8,000, actually an $8,300 computer. This is 1/10 of that, just over 1/10 of that cost. And we get help documentation, imagine that. We also got a keyboard and mouse. So I forgot about this. This is realistically only really probably worth 10 or 15 bucks to tell you the truth. It does come with a sleeved USB cord. It is a USB-A plug, not USB-C. It is RGB and a membrane keyboard. So here's the thing, if you're trying to get someone set up with like a tower or something for their first gaming computer or whatever, it's nice to have something like this already that comes with it. Even if it's not your daily driver, if you're gonna get a different mouse and keyboard, just to have on hand as a spare is nice to have. Although it's membrane keys and kind of mushy, it's not terrible. It's also not the cheapest I've felt, to be honest. The mouse, very lightweight. Like this, unfortunately, is one of those like, I feel like if I looked at it wrong, it'll probably break. It's extremely light. Now to me, I like a heavy mouse, I do. So having a lightweight mouse like this is not gonna be something preferred for me, but it's included. Not why I bought the system. These are just bonuses. We also get this pretty neat handy dandy thing, which not only is a quick start guide for plugging it in and stuff, but it also shows you how to troubleshoot any of your Windows activation or recovery. Recovery is important. So it shows you how to do a recovery of your drive if you need to. So that's kind of nice. And then last but not least, it is a non-modular power supply, so there's no cables or anything in here, but it is a wireless motherboard. So we get our power cable, which to be honest is a very thin gauge. I don't know the wattage of the power supply. We won't know until I do the teardown right now. I guessed that it was a 500 watt, probably like a white box, no name kind of a deal. So when I did my price comparison, I just did like a $47 80 plus, just 80 plus, I think they call it 80 plus white now, but 80 plus EVGA power supply, even though that's not what this is. This is very thin gauge, so a little bit quality lacking there. But our wireless antennas, and that's it. That's all you get that comes with it. There's no recovery drive. I think there's a partition on the drive for that, and I can tell because it's a 500 gig drive and only 465 gigs available, which is lower than the typical partition amount that you would get with just the normal drive allocation. So I think the partition or the recovery is actually a partition on the drive. Moving on, let's talk about the actual quality of the system. So this is a pretty standard look for iBuyPower. We saw them building these actually. We took a tour of iBuyPower's facility and we got to see their build stations and stuff. And they build these 10 at a time. And then they get sent off to different people that are selling their systems, whether it be like Micro Center, Walmart, Amazon, I don't know, Best Buy, I think. Either Best Buy does iBuyPower or CyberPower, I can't remember which. But they have their e-tailers and retailers, so they build them 10 at a time, and that's exactly what this is. This at one point went through that exact station that we showed. So anyway, so this is a very typical chassis you would find in these more budget builds. It is an ATX chassis, although the motherboard inside is a micro ATX. The thumb screws are not captive. So if you go to take off the glass, I would suggest holding the glass as the screw comes out in your palm, and then it removes to the rear. Now the glass is actually fairly heavy. It's probably the heaviest thing in this entire build, if I know the truth. It's about 4 millimeters thick. So it's, actually no, I think this is 3 millimeters thick. But it has a metal frame, which is nice, because the metal frame will give it rigidity so that if you were to drop it, you'd have a little better chance of not breaking it. And we do have foam at the top and the bottom, which is gonna help with any rattling sounds or anything like that. So this is actually a little bit better quality glass for this case than I would have expected. And it's definitely better than the quality case I put into the cart when trying to match the parts if you were gonna build the system yourself. Top fan is a magnetic, so it's a magnetic mesh with a filter inside of it. And you can see that gives you access to your top 360 millimeter available worth of fans for AIO or case fans. Does not have any exhaust fans on the top, as one 120 millimeter iBuyPower branded ARGB fan on the back and 3 on the front. So those all match, which is kind of nice. Let's go ahead and take a look at the back side. You can see we have a embossed iBuyPower logo. It's just the cat right there. And then you can see the cable management there, fairly straightforward, nothing too crazy to write home about. It's not terrible, it's not great. We even have an ARGB pigtail here off of something, probably the front fans. Let's see, front panel here, yep, just pops off. So this is glass, this is glass, this is mesh right here. The mesh material does not come out for cleaning, so you would need to take the whole front piece off right here. If you needed to clean dust off of this, you could blow dust out there. You do have a fan filter here as well, which is magnetic on there. So we're almost like double filtered, if you will, which can hurt airflow. However, I will say this, when we did our temperature testing, the temps ran pretty good, and we'll show those when we get to that portion of the video. But I did leave all of this in place. So we could have even had better airflow if I was to remove this, because the fineness of the mesh on the front panel is fine enough to where it could stop large particulates from getting in there, say dog hair, I don't know, large particles of dust or whatever. Fine dust would make it through there. But if you wanted to have some filtration but better airflow, you could remove the magnetic filter and have better airflow. Now obviously it's only pulling from about half of the surface area of the front panel, but when we look at the temperatures, I think what held us back in some of the temps as we look at here is gonna be the cooler that's in here. This is a Deepcool UL551. It's unique, one, because it's Deepcool, so I don't know whether or not this is supposed to be in here. It's my understanding that with the current sanctions, these cannot be used by anybody. I know they can't be sold, and I know they were removed from all the shelves, and I could be wrong. Please, as a very wise man says, bleep bloop it down below whether or not this should be in here, or if this should have been removed from circulation within their parts. So I'm confused about this. The second thing I'm confused about is the fact that this is an AM5 socketed UL551. The only UL551s I could find from Deepcool were actually Intel socketed, which means the bottom part doesn't have a bracket that comes off that can be changed for the socket type. So this is an AM5 one, but for all intents and purposes, the heatsink itself and the downfire fan is a UL551. So it's a downfire, which is nice because if you look inside there, you'll see that there's an M.2 drive there. It's an MSI drive, and it has no heatsink or anything on it. So this particular motherboard doesn't include any sort of a heatsink cover for the drive, which means having the downfire fan gives you some airflow over the drive, which is nice. And it's not, because if you look at the location of that drive, it's above the graphics card. So none of the graphics card, like fan air is gonna hit it, but downfire air from the CPU cooler will. So that would give our drive some cooling there. Now, some of you might have noticed, there's one stick of RAM. That's gripe number one with this build. There's no reason whatsoever in today's age that anyone should be running single channel memory. It's a DDR5 Team Group 5200 megahertz 16 gigabyte stick. It's not a cheap stick. It's a $100 kit. But I suspect what IBuyPower is doing to sort of stretch the margin is they're buying 2 stick kits and then they're putting 1 stick per build. Now you can add more RAM to this if you wanted. And we'll show you as we do the price comparison that it still has a decent value, even by doing it this way. However, you are sort of neutering a little bit of the performance of your CPU in more RAM intensive tasks because of the fact the CPU only has 1 channel of RAM available to it to store data in. And dual channel should never be like omitted. It should always be in dual channel. In fact, you might be looking at this right now thinking, well, the RAM is overhanging, or the cooler is overhanging on the RAM. That's why they did 1 stick. In fact, Phil just did that to me off camera and I had to show him, no, it actually will fit. You can populate all 4. The cooler is tall enough. It's just, you would have to kind of get in there at a weird angle. Ugh. There. So you can do it. You sort of have to He-Man it like you just saw, but you can get it in there. So that's a little sketchy because this is a sort of a tall heatsink RAM right there. So I had to kind of go in there at an angle and then like let it slip in there. So I'll leave that in that position now rather than take it out at the moment because I've already done my test on this. The graphics card. It is an RTX 4060 by PNY. It is an absolutely no frills card. As you can see, it's using a standard PCI Express. These are not the heaviest gauge PCI Express cables. As you can see, they're pretty thin gauge. So I think it's probably sized fine for the graphics card that's in here. So this has one of those useless retainers. I hate these on cases so much. They really don't do anything, I guess, except make it a little prettier. Those bug me, whatever. So yeah, the 4060, plenty of graphics card for 1080p and 1440p gaming. Let's see, we can access the retention tab here. All right, so there we go. It is just, like I said, a straight up bare bones RTX 4060. It is a super tiny PCB, as you can see. What's crazy about this is this sucker is like way more powerful than like your 2070 Ti. It's crazy, right? To think about this little thing right now that feels like it wouldn't even work as a doorstop. It would just get pushed out of the way. We've come a long way. So those are SSD, as you can see right there. Our heatsink It is pretty chintzy as far as I'm concerned. I'm shocked that this is an Asus motherboard, as you can see right there. Asus Prime B650MA AX6. It is a Wi-Fi, no frills whatsoever motherboard. In fact, a lot of the chokes are completely exposed. Just the VRMs themselves have this very lightweight aluminum heatsink on there with spring-loaded retention. All right, so let's see if we can get the RAM out. So retention tab, wiggle it up. Oh, you gotta uncomfortably bend it. Okay, but you can do it. No damage. Not the best. This is not the best cooler for this, but it's probably, to be fair, it's about as good as a box cooler. If I spin the fan, you can see it just looks like one of those old Intel box coolers. This is a Ryzen 7600, so it's not a very high watt part. It's like 80 watts at the most. It's really a 65 watt part. This was actually pulling 80 watts in my test. Nothing seemed to not be working. The motherboard is controlling the ARGB. Everything was ARGBing as expected. Oh, I want to point this out right here too. If we look at the distance between this cooler and the top right here, you may or may not be able to fit a fan there. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, that fits just fine. 25 mil fan will fit between the cooler. Barely though. So 28 mil fan or thicker, not gonna work. But if you wanna add exhaust fans, your deep cool cooler is not in the way. This is kinda nice. The IBuyPower case has a single plug for a front panel. So I love this. There's no reason for this not to exist on any case these days because we've now gone standardized on the layout of the pins. No reason for a standard plug like that not to exist. So I'm looking for the clear CMOS jumpers because the button on the back is a BIOS flashback. It's crazy that Asus would put a BIOS flashback jumper on the back of the motherboard, but not a clear CMOS button. Because you may have noticed when I showed you everything they gave me, they did not give me a motherboard manual. So I can go online and find the motherboard manual for this and find where the clear CMOS jumper is. But I don't know why they didn't just give me the manual. Normally that's what you would get with all, like you would get any stickers or accessories that come with the motherboard, like additional M.2 hold down screws. Cause look, here's an exact problem of them not giving me that. We have an M.2 expansion slot right here, but there's no hold down screws included. So without the motherboard accessories, I don't have those screws. So if I went, okay, 500 gigs is fine, I'll just add one. Now, sure, I can order these screws from Amazon. They're pretty easy. A lot of M.2 drives even come with a screw. They're not always the same thread. Usually they are. Sometimes they're not. So I would be annoyed with one, I don't know where my clear CMOS jumper is. Okay, I do, because it's labeled right here. But I know that because I know that CLRTC printed on the motherboard means it's a clear CMOS. But if I'm a new builder, I'm a new buyer, I've never had a PC before, I'm not gonna know what that means. So having a manual just to peruse through when I'm bored and taking a dump, you know, I like to read on the toilet. That's when I do my best thinking. That's where I come up with all my greatest ideas, and I think it shows. But if I don't have that to read, I can't learn about it. And I also don't have the screws because they didn't include any of those accessories. So that's a minus right there for IBuyPower. Why not put the manual in this bag? There's clearly enough room for it. So, okay, so if you like the screwdriver that you saw me using here, this is actually a Works electronic screwdriver. It's got 3 torque settings on it. This is a magnet that I have used to magnetize the shaft. So also by leaving it on there allows the tip to stay magnetized, and it's nice and long. I added these bits separately so I could, when I do my builds, reach down into the motherboard. I'll put a link in the description below to Amazon. It gives us an affiliate kickback if you're interested in it. It's actually not that expensive. It's way cheaper than the Linus screwdriver. All right, here we go. So what is this power supply? It looks like it's just like it's a 600 watt. Okay, it's a Raid Max, actually, and it's 80 plus gold. It's better than what I spec'd, so I'm gonna have to adjust my list when we talk about price here in a moment because I spec'd an 80 plus white, 500 watt. This is a Raid Max 600 watt, 80 plus gold. So we have room to grow. We could go up to like a 70 series GPU in this comfortably if we wanted to. Not modular or anything neat like that, but still good enough. Let's talk about the cable management. It looks like a first-time builder did it, but to be fair, they're building these things fast. They are just like churning them out as fast as they can. There's very little margin in this build at all. When we talk about the prices, I think you'll understand that. So we are zip tied. Our cables are going where they should. EPS is coming straight down to the GPU. We've got stuff away from the grommets as much as we can, so you don't see a cable clutter mess behind it. I just don't understand why they used these twist ties. They probably were pre-installed, honestly, with the case. But I would like to have seen these twist ties replaced with actual zip ties, just so it looks a little neater. But because we do have zip ties that they did while they were, you know, obviously doing their thing. Now on the bottom here, there's no additional expansion for a drive, although it looks like there should have been. All right, so drive storage, we've got 2.5-inch drive sled right here. It's a single sled that holds 2. And then we have, whoops, I should probably mount that back down. We have 2 spots on the bottom where we could technically mount a 3.5-inch drive. But again, because we don't have any of the case accessories, we don't have those rubber grommets that are intended to like come through the hole and then slide into position, because you're intended to mount 2 of the drives like vertically next to each other right there. We don't have the accessories that came with the case, so we can't add that. So there's another negative point right there for iBuyPower. These give you more clearance in front of the fan. So you would have to remove the one closest to the fans. Get in there. There. You would have to remove that one. Otherwise, you'll have no clearance for your radiator. The downside is if you were gonna do a 360 rad on the front, or even a 240 probably, maybe, you're gonna lose one drive mounting option. Now the screws on the side, or the holes on the side, just mount on the side of your drive. So the drive will be mounted vertically, not horizontally. Again, we don't have screws that came with it. I guarantee you all this stuff was in the box of the iBuyPower case. When they built it, it just did not make its way to me. All right, there we go. That was a pretty solid paste application. RGB still plugged in. Looks like it was just whatever paste was installed with it. So you can see now how I say this looks like a old school Intel cooler, but it has the spacing for AMD. Everyone I found online has Intel spacing and says it only works with Intel. So this is kind of a anomaly. Okay, so let's talk about performance then. All the fans and stuff were set to default. CPU fan, whatever header it was getting its information from, chassis fans. I can tell you right now, under load, they ramped up. They did their job. I put my hand kind of feeling around the case to see how warm the air coming out was. Although we only had 1 exhaust fan, a fair amount of air was still making its way out the top because we have 3 intake fans, very positive pressure, so the hot air moves its way out wherever it could. I'd prefer at least another exhaust fan on the top on the back to promote a little better cross flow. Doesn't matter, the airflow was perfectly fine in this case. Now, the frequencies, 4.95 gigahertz all cores where the 7600 started on my OCCT stress test. It dropped to about 4.795, averaging in the mid 4.8 gigahertz through the entire run. If we look at the CPU temperatures, you can see it got pretty warm in the upper 80s. However, as you can see by those temperatures, it did not affect our clock speeds greatly. The clock speeds are going to fluctuate based on not just temperature when it comes to the way that the turbo tables work when it comes to CPUs, but also the workload. And OCCT is a varying workload. It's not just one type of workload through the entire thing. It's an AVX2 instruction set, but it does it different ways. So that's why as you look at the frequency and the temps, you'll see it kind of fluctuate all over the place. That's because of the different types of loads that are hitting it. So fortunately, we weren't dealing with any like serious throttling. That's why earlier in the unboxing, I talked about the fact that the case and this mesh and the fact that it's still got this much blocked off, this is pretty. Personally, I would prefer to see this be an entirely mesh front side. What I should have done, honestly, is ran the test again without this on there to see what it did for temperatures. Unfortunately, I didn't think of that till right this moment. I'll try to remember that for future videos. We didn't see any major throttling. The cooler, this chunk of black aluminum is our limiting factor. And the fact that we only have a 65 watt part that was pulling about 80 watts under full load was still reaching about 88C. Again, 95C is our max on this CPU, so 88C is perfectly fine. That's what's holding us back. Even like a $20 Cooler Master Hyper 212 would have outperformed this greatly. But we wouldn't have had the benefits of the downfire, which I think the motherboard components desperately need. So I would have probably put a better downfire cooler in this for our M.2 drive and the components around the CPU socket. Because if I had a standard 212, it would all blow right past it and you wouldn't have much airflow going directly to it. So it's kind of a trade-off. GPU-wise though, this thing boosted all the way up to over 2,800 megahertz in we did Speedway on this one, because Speedway is a little bit more consistent of a test. So over 2,800 megahertz. So if you look at the chart right here, what you're seeing is you're seeing both edge temp and hotspot temp, and you're seeing the fan percent. So that line on the bottom is the percentage of the fan curve. It really didn't go above like 46%. So the temperatures, although they reach 70, which is not bad at all, with only 46% fan curve and being nearly silent, like inaudible, it's actually performing very well, which tells me the chassis itself is not choking off the graphics card. So that's why I think this mesh plus fan filter, although not optimal, was not terrible. It's kind of like medium in between in terms of airflow and such. Bottom line is, we got what we paid for. I don't see anything here where it looked like, I almost said AMD, where iBuyPower was trying to cut any sort of corners. I don't see anywhere here where they were trying to pull a fast one. It's all name brand stuff. I'm gonna say that because I have another PC that I bought while I was on Amazon by a company I've never heard of that has some really questionable parts in there. So I wanted to see, like, are we getting name brand? Are we getting what we paid for? Are we getting these like Temu, AliExpress stuff no one's ever heard of? No, we got an MSI drive, got an Asus motherboard, obviously a real AMD Ryzen CPU, a deep cool cooler that probably shouldn't be in here, a PNY graphics card, which was shocking the heck out of me, and although not the most high end of power supplies, still not a knockoff, no name brand either, and it's gold rated. Although these wires are still very thin for my comfort levels, trying to put a higher end graphics card in there. So value-wise, well, quality-wise, we got what we were expecting. Exactly, everything booted up just fine. No bloatware, none. In fact, if you want their software, this is part of the link right here, is you download right here. You download the software using this link. If you don't want it, don't download it. No bloatware whatsoever. Windows wasn't activated though, which is interesting because when I tried to change the display, like customize the background colors and stuff, it told me my Windows wasn't activated. It said because it wasn't a valid key. So I was like, uh-oh, is this maybe where they were saving some money by just reusing a key and going, you buy Windows if you want to control it. I just hit the troubleshoot button on the activate screen and it was like, we activated your Windows and everything was fine. So I was like, okay. I was actually gonna call their customer service to see if they could help, but I hit the troubleshoot button first, which fixed it. So there took my opportunity of calling customer service. So there is that. Okay, cost. I said I got this for $899.99 from Amazon. So I tried to build this system using the same parts. And actually, I got all the same parts in my cart in Amazon, minus the case and the power supply, because I couldn't find those two exact things. And the RAM, I have to put a caveat, they don't sell these in a single stick. They don't even sell 5200 anymore. What's in here is 6000. So I think they had a bunch of these left over and that's why they were splitting them amongst systems and putting one stick in. So I took the cost of a pair, is $100 for a pair, and then I just said 50 bucks for one stick. That's how I priced that out. And then the case that I'm using right here is the Montech X3 mesh. It's the one I recently used in Miami when I did that build with Austin. So I actually like that case, it's not bad. And I do have $120 worth of Windows Home in here. So that's where I know a lot of you are gonna get all mad. Now, yes, you can go and find places to get free Windows, cracked Windows, cheap Windows, whatever. If you put yourself in the perspective of a first-time buyer, they're not gonna necessarily know about that or even how to do it safely. So they're gonna build the stuff and go, oh yeah, I need Windows, and they're gonna throw it in there. Because we got a legit copy of Windows Home, a Windows 11 Home, I put it in here. So if you don't agree with that, just minus the cost, $119 from it. And you can go from there. So I got Montech X3 case, Thermaltake Tough Power XG2 80 plus gold 600 watt power supply to basically probably a better quality than that one actually. $119 for Windows, $38 for that exact MSI Spatium drive, PCI 4.0 500 gigabyte drive. But I put a Cooler Master Hyper 212 cooler because it's better than this. That Team Group memory, as I said, so we'll call it 50 bucks. Asus Prime B550 motherboard, the same PNY 4060 8 gigabyte card, and then the Ryzen 7600 comes to a total of $987 minus 50, $937. Keep in mind, right now, at the time of making this video, it's $983 because the sale is over. So I would recommend waiting for it to go on sale again, or even necessarily just buying it at that price if you feel this is worth it to you, because you are now talking about a $50 builder fee. I hope they're getting these prices at a good margin or these parts at a good margin, because I can't see them making money that way. They definitely didn't make money at the $899, I don't think. So that's why I said this was a little surprising that we were able to get this fully functional working computer with name brand parts. Nothing funky like the GPU wasn't running at its right speed. Expo was enabled. Okay, that was little things I was looking for. Was Expo enabled? Were all fans plugged in? Was ARGB control working? Aura was pre-installed, but not Armory Crate, which is interesting. I'm actually a little bit relieved because I was like, well, that's gonna be about a 4 million wheel bus iBuyPower is gonna get thrown under if it turns out to be garbage. Now, iBuyPower has had its struggles in the past, and they recognize that. And it's one of those things that they've worked very hard to alleviate over the last few years. I had a good conversation with the CEO and co-founder of the company about the past and mistakes they've made. And so that's why I wanted to buy this without them knowing. Yes, I bought this. This is not sponsored, obviously. I'm sure they've been watching this video the entire time, sweating bullets, because I am also gonna be secret shopping their PC configurator with the custom build we did that they sent to us that they knew about. We're gonna rematch it or recreate it without them knowing. We're gonna compare the two. I'm okay with this. I don't have anything that really stands out to me that seems like this is a scam or this is any sort of taking advantage of someone pricing at a entry-level price point. Yeah, 900 bucks is still a lot of money, but in terms of PC and in 2024 money, it's not a lot of money. So I'm pleasantly surprised at how this turned out. This is where you guys can comment down below if you think this was a good deal or not. You guys can, I'll put Amazon links are down there. If it was on sale at $8.99 once, it might be on sale for $8.99 again, which is a killer deal because my parts were more expensive. Because I bought it through Prime, shipping was free. All the parts, if I bought them separately, would have also had free shipping, so no shipping cost to configure it and think about it in there. All right, sound off down below. How do you feel about this build? I think for 900 bucks, it is impossible to beat. Even at 930 or 980, it's a pretty good deal.